Hey, let me do half of a story by Anthony Trollope, the Pnjmdrm from Editor Tales. This is part one, Hope, which as the editor, because all these are editor's tales, starts to begin. It's like, well, I'm not actually the editor at the moment because when I use the we, I'm saying the we of the people we're all getting together to make this magazine called the Pnjmdrm, which gives a nice little snapshot on the vagaries of the publishing industry and what goes into a magazine, and maybe why you end up with the magazines that you end up with, because everybody's pulling in all different directions. You've got one guy who's an atheist philosopher. You've got a woman who's very much kind of like hopeness and light, and kind of like seems like kind of that kind of a flake character. Got various guys who are like, they're gonna we're like, I'm just the money guy and all that stuff, and everyone's got a different opinion, and so it's very hard to get things together. The editor, he's like, oh, I've got a poem that I want to open with that's like, it'll be very good, and people like, but I kept it in my pocket and I mentioned it, and people are like, no, that wouldn't be a good idea for a start, and just sort of like crushes his little hopes right from the beginning. um and Yeah, so it kind of goes along like that. We get descriptions of all the people. We get basically kind of, it's a committee. So in other words, there's four four stomachs and no brains. Which is what it comes down to, because everyone pulls in opposite directions. But yet at the end of the section, the editor is still like, I still hope that we'll have something that'll bring great literary thing to the thing, a great literary boon to our country, stuff like that. I've still got the hope. And then the second section is called Despair, which will be, I assume, how from this very shaky opening, the magazine will maybe have one issue and then fold. uh, Interestingly enough, they have a thing of like, well, this was before the time when it was de rigueur to have fiction in a magazine, and obviously the editor, maybe a stand-in for Trllp, is like, well, but I've got like great hopes of like I'll have fiction, and they're like, yeah, that's really nice, but we're not really interested in it. And there's a debate about, oh, we shouldn't call it a gentleman's magazine because it would dissuade the ladies, because we're talking about like audiences and stuff like that. So it's all really interesting little. It's more of an interesting snapshot of what maybe Trollope thought of the publishing industry, and like just basically how things operated that way, and just like it sounds like maybe how a magazine would operate today in a lot of ways is definitely the way of things. So I think that's all I have to say about the first section. I was sort of confused when I got to the end of this, because I just downloaded it as, I guess, part one, and I hadn't downloaded the other bits yet, and that it's like, oh, it doesn't seem to really amount to anything, but it's like, oh, there's a part two, so hopefully maybe the part two will get a little bit more into a bit of drama. It seems like a little bit of just a snapshot of the magazine industry at this point, but we'll see how it goes in the second section.